And we are live. We actually already have a comment. Somebody, Mike's, I can't wait. This is going to be a big help in deciding on where I want to go. Okay, so we are counting down to decision day. It's actually 10 days away. And if anybody doesn't know, decision day is when you need to submit deposits, but Anna and I will talk about how sometimes you don't have to on that day, but don't stretch it out. But we're going to talk about how to make the decision of where to go to college, when to go to college. Well, not when, but where to go to college. So I have with me Anna Ivey, a good friend. Anna, do you want to tell everybody what you've been up to? Because you've been up to so much.
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats, but they're all related. So I come from the admissions and higher ed world. I have worked in university administration at University of Chicago and Stanford. I have run my own admissions consulting firm with a wonderful team of former admissions officers. I've written admissions related books. I write newsletters. It's all the same expertise. It's just delivered in these different ways. My passion project is a software tool that we built called Inline that helps students with every question and every essay prompt on the Common App platform, including the supplements. I just got back from visiting one of our partner schools on Tuesday up in Northern California. It was really exciting to meet them for the first time. I've only worked with these partner schools virtually for a while now. So it's just exciting. Not that it's still wonderful to see everybody virtually here. Yeah. It's better than not being able to see you at all, for sure.
Yeah.
So those are my various projects. As I say, it's all the same expertise. It's just delivered in a variety of media. And I'm always excited to do live conversations like this with real students. Always fun. So I'm excited to hear what your questions are. Also, the people who are watching and posting comments.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing the comments on the side.
You can also submit comments later, and I will tag them between me and Anna on Twitter or something like that. And now making her debut performance on the platform, our friend Amma. Yay. Amma, do you want to tell everybody who you are? If you're comfortable where you're deciding between what's it coming down to, but you don't have to go into depth because we're about to, but just tell everybody about yourself real quick.
Okay. Hi, I'm Amma. I'm a senior at Forest Park High School, Woodbridge, Virginia. I'm interested in doing engineering, and my top 3 choices are Caltech, Columbia, and Carnegie Mellon.
Okay. And Amy, a regular here.
Yeah.
Amy, tell us who you are and where you're deciding between right now.
Okay, my name is Sylla. I also go by Amy. I'm a senior at Hilton High School and also the ambassador for the college admissions support group run by Miss Jen. And I'm deciding between VCU and Richmond University right now.
University of Richmond. I'm like, why am I correcting that? But because people are like, Richmond University. But yeah. So, Anna, let's start with you. What would you do if we get down to May 1st and you still don't know where you're going to go, or you're still doing a financial aid appeal, which we talked about on Tuesday, or you just need more time? What's the first step?
So first step is if there are real circumstances that are making things difficult for you, including still waiting for some financial aid results, you can always ask for an extension. That doesn't mean they'll say yes, but it's always fine to ask politely. You're not going to lose your offer because you ask for an extension. The worst they can do is say no. It's May 1. So that can always be step number 1. If that's not an option, then put your deposit down somewhere. Even if you want to wait and see what happens to waitlist schools or what other financial aid options you end up having, put a deposit down somewhere. That's your insurance while you wait for other schools to make their decisions, right? And to get final answers on applications that might still be out there pending. So don't miss that deadline, please. I will say that I've seen some chatter online like, well, I don't want to put a deposit down because I might not get that money back. And what if I end up accepting an offer off of a wait list? In some ways, that's the cost of doing business, to go through this process, because you must have a spot somewhere if you want to start this fall. Like, do not just hope for the best. So most people are not going to get offers off of wait lists.
Yeah.
So I would not count on
started
it.
happening. So offers have started happening off a wait list. I've been seeing some offers.
But I wouldn't count on it, right? And also I would sort of emotionally invest in wherever you're putting your deposit down in May, because chances are that's where you're going to go. And so, if you get an offer off of one of your wait lists, great, that's gravy. Treat that as a bonus, but I wouldn't expect it. Yeah. So make plans as if you are going to go be enrolling wherever it is you put your deposit down, and plans can change, and that's fine. But be methodical about it and don't miss that deposit deadline.
Yeah. And I would say don't also, because I've seen people not do deposits or delay the deposit, and then the decision just it snowballs. It doesn't get easier over time. Like, I'm still debating between these two colleges. It snowballs over time, and you're never gonna 100% know, like, some people do, but 100% know, like, this was the right choice. Like, this is 100% the right choice. This is where I'm supposed to go. Like, that's not something that some people get to. So at one point you have to make a decision. And if the only thing holding you back is like which college, then just go ahead and make that decision.
You have to make a decision.
Yeah.
I like to ask people, what piece of information are you still waiting for that you don't have right now and that you haven't had plenty of opportunity to go track down, right? Because if you can't point to something specific, and sometimes you can, I'm still waiting for financial aid, or sometimes there are good reasons. But if you can't point to a specific piece of information that you're still needing and waiting for, then you're just scared to make a decision. And it's not going to be less scary with the passage of time. Then you just need to make a decision. This is part of becoming a grown-up. Like, you have to make decision without perfect information. Nobody is going to have that crystal ball about what it's actually going to be like to be a student there in the fall. There's no way to know that with any certainty. You just have to accept that and make the smartest decision you can at this moment in time, unless, as I say, unless you can point to something specific that you're still waiting for.
Amma, is there anything that you're outstanding, waiting for? I know you're doing a visit. Anything that you feel like you're looking for in the last but in the last week as we get ready?
Yeah. With what you said with visiting the colleges, just to kind of see if it's the right fit and just to kind of observe the environment, that's something I've noticed, like, when I've been going on these visits. So I'm just hoping, like, this last weekend, just to visit a few more schools, just to kind of see, like, I kind of sometimes look at the students and see what they're doing, how they're, like, interacting with each other on the campus, and things like that kind of are things that I'm noticing. But I would say that the thing that I'm looking for the most is just really, like, the ratio of students to teachers, and just kind of taking things off my list and then factoring, like, financial aid and seeing if it's a good school and if the price is right as well.
Amy, what about you? You've done your visits.
Yes, I've done my visits. I'm waiting on a financial aid from Richmond, which is a big factor.
And to be clear, it wasn't because of Richmond that
no, it
we have not gotten the financial aid, because they're usually very fast. Yeah.
And then also I've been planning meetings with pre-health advisors at these schools to see what the pre-med program is like at the school and how it's going to be a good fit for me.
So Amma's going into engineering, which I always think either you're going into a program that's nurturing or you're going into a program that's kicking you out, right? And most engineering programs, you do lose a lot of students, because what you think an engineer is and what an engineer actually is a completely different reality. But what advice would you give to her as she's looking at different options, especially Caltech being more specialized, Columbia being Columbia, right? And then Carnegie Mellon. So how does she wrap her head around that? And I'm going to come to you and ask you how you are wrapping your head around that.
Is that directed at me, Jen?
Yes. Sorry,
okay.
Anna. I feel like I was looking at you.
No, it's fine. I just didn't want to cut in line if it was directed at someone else. So first of all, congratulations. Those are 3 amazing options that you have. This is a nice problem to have. So I always like to point out when a problem is a nice one to have, right? These are 3 very different environments in some ways. Caltech, which is here in my neck of the woods in Southern California. Caltech is kind of an interesting duck because their undergraduate program is very, very small. It's tiny. Their graduate program is much, much bigger. So it's a very graduate school, graduate student dominated environment. And that might be fine. You might love having a really small undergrad group, right? But it's something to be mindful of. That's something that is very distinctive about Caltech. Columbia's engineering program, as you know, there's the engineering program at Columbia, and then there's Columbia College, which is the liberal arts side. What's a bit unusual about Columbia's engineering program is that even if you're in the School of Engineering, you are required to take a certain number of classes over on the liberal arts side in the core curriculum. You're not doing the full core the way the Columbia College people are doing, but you're doing some of the core. And that makes Columbia's engineering program distinctive. So for some people, that's a feature. For some people, that's a bug. If you want something a little bit more well-rounded and less narrowly focused than just engineering, then Columbia is, I think, something to consider for that reason. It is, of course, in a major city, right? It's smack in the middle of New York City. I think you were saying you hadn't visited yet, but perhaps you'll have a chance to see it. It's a bit unusual for a city school because it does have a real campus, even though it's in Manhattan. Not all city schools have kind of traditional campuses, the way we think of that. So if you like a little bit of both, that could be an upside for you. And then Carnegie Mellon is the other option, right? Carnegie Mellon is also a city school. Caltech is not. It's out in Pasadena. It's beautiful. You're looking up at the mountains. It's perfect weather. There's a lot going for it, but it is not an urban environment. Columbia and Carnegie Mellon, both urban environments. Carnegie Mellon is fun from my perspective because they've got, this really strong STEM culture, STEM program, STEM people doing really interesting things. They also have this very famous performing arts division. And so you get this fascinating mix of the sort of art school types, theater types, performing arts, along with the STEM people. And I think that makes for kind of interesting vibe, but that's not to say that any one of these is better or worse than the others. I think that's just a very subjective decision. You really can't go wrong with any one of these, I believe, for engineering. So I think it comes down to which of these particular kinds of communities are going to be most nurturing for you, where are you going to thrive? City, not city, liberal artsy folks or not, how specialized do you want to be? I would be very direct with them and ask to speak to who are the advisors for the first year engineers. I'd want to talk to those. Same thing for pre-med. Amy, because when you're coming in on a specialized track like that, whether it's pre-med or engineering, very often they will assign a specialized counselor advisor to you quite early in your 4 years. And so I'd be very curious, who are those people? I'd love for you to talk to some students in the pre-med and the engineering tracks respectively and find out, what kind of support are you getting? What's the advising like? And students, as you know, students will be straight with you. Yeah. They're not going to give you the marketing spin and no, they will be totally honest with you. And then of course, I do think cost should factor into your decision making. We can certainly talk about that as well, more generally. Yeah. But in general, I would be very wary of taking on student debt. I think if someone is going to take on student debt, there should be a really good reason for it. But I think it's a very serious thing. And so I think the bottom line cost of attending, including cost of living, all of it, bottom lining it is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the less debt you can get yourself into, the more freedom you will have afterwards.
And the one thing I would say, like, I have so many follow-ups, and I'm gonna give you a chance, but the one thing I would say, like, is when you're talking to students, ask them what were some reservations that you had that were not concerns, what some things that came up that you didn't realize were going to come up, and what's something that you learned about the college that only you learned about when you got there, because there's that. But the one thing I also would like to say is a lot of admissions in the last, I don't know, recently has come down to, like, how do I feel when I get there? Like, how do I feel, right? And I would just like to put it out there, rich campuses feel great. Like, they always are going to feel great. They pay for it to feel great. And so for me, it comes down to, who do I want to be 4 years from now? And who's going to, like, do I want, especially in engineering and Amy with med, do I want a cutthroat environment? Do I want, like, one question that you could be asking is, if you're struggling, who helps you? How many graduate students are teaching the courses as opposed to you actually taking the course with the professor? Like, who do you have to reach out for help? Or are they reaching out to you for help? What kind of environment do we have for learning here? Because there are some environments where, you know, I felt like for my graduate school, it was very nurturing, where it was like, hey, I noticed you're a little bit behind. Like, can I help you out with this? And then there are, you know, other programs, you know, as somebody who went to Virginia Tech, and watched everybody kind of go through engineering, they didn't have the nurturing that I had on the liberal arts side of the campus. And so it was very cutthroat. So you have to say, what is a culture like? Not just how does it feel here and what does it feel like? Because again, rich campuses feel great. And the third thing, I feel like I said the one thing, and then the third thing, but the third thing is, I would say, if you're going to go into debt and you're going to say, I'm going to pay, I don't know, like 20% more, 30% more, 50% more, 100% more, how is it going to return? Because I think sometimes we think, oh, you know, like, it's really easy when you're taking out debt to be
It's
like,
so easy. It's
no,
so easy.
5,000, 10,000, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's such,
and it's monopoly money. It's abstract.
right. But the difference between 5,000 and 10,000 can be the difference between years. But also, if your parents are paying it back, if you're not paying it back, it could be the difference between them retiring at 60 or retiring at 70 or not having a life until this. And then the fourth and final thing before I get to you, Amma, is remember, you can just go there for grad school. Like, if you got in for undergrad, the probability of you getting in for grad school, I don't know the probability, but anything that you take off the table, you can bring back on the table for a master's, for a summer program. So you're not closed or boxed in. So I got waitlisted at UVA. I did a summer program at UVA, and I went to Virginia Tech. So I think sometimes you feel like it's a final decision when there's opportunities to do your master's or your summer programs, or access some of the programs like political leadership programs for me that were at UVA's campus that I felt like could help nurture me without being at UVA. Amma, you're hearing all of this. What are your thoughts, your thinking? Amy, I'm coming to you next.
Yeah, I mean, at first, like, my thoughts were all over the place, just trying to decide how to, look at these schools individually and kind of see what they all have to offer, location, like class size. And I realized that I really do like a smaller class size, because in my classes, there's a lot of time to go to the teacher with their like office hours and get some extra help. So I do like that ability to have more of a connection with the professors and like the students as well, with the collaboration and instead of like a cutthroat environment. But I do know that schools that may seem cutthroat, as long as you have like a strong friend group, you all encourage each other, then you can still have that collaboration there. But I guess I've just kind of now been looking at just some like opinions and thoughts people that have went there have had. And I know just to take those with a grain of salt, but I do definitely see like reaching out to people that attend these schools or have attended these schools as a great way to have like more of an informed opinion.
I love that. And circling back to the topic of talking to students who are currently there. And I raised this issue with great deference because I'm the least qualified among the four of us to raise this issue. But I would try to talk specifically to Black women students, undergrads, because I would want to get some comfort from them directly that they feel supported there and that they have a community there. As I say, I'm not an expert on the topic. I will leave that.
You're conscious on the topic. And I think that, I think one of the things, Amy, I'm coming to you, I promise, but one of the things that I noticed is, a school can be diverse, right? But disconnected. And so sometimes we're looking at the diversity numbers or we're looking at it's like the stats and we're thinking, oh, this is it has a larger population. So therefore, and sometimes because there's a larger population, there's not a need to connect as much. And therefore there's not a community. And sometimes in like the smaller populations, and I found that at UVA Law, like it was, we were like together it was like brothers and sisters and family members. And I would consider everybody my family. So I think you have to figure out what matters. But also I would say what colleges are trying hard, right? Like what colleges are taking for granted the fact that you are coming and what colleges are like, hey, do you need to talk to a student? Hey, do you need to, because some of these colleges and, I'm not speaking to Alma or Amy's experience, they're just waiting for you to enroll. And other colleges are actively seeking out opportunities to be like, hey, do you need to connect to somebody? Like we have this person, we thought maybe you could connect with them. So what colleges are putting in the effort and then ask the students, like, is that effort maintained after you get in or is this just for show? Amy, thoughts, considerations?
Overall, I think I'm just looking at different factors because my schools are very different, but they share the same similarity of being in Richmond. But I think it's just deciding what I want in a school and then picking and choosing like the factors that matter to me in the school. So like the class sizes, what research opportunities are going to give me, the internships, how easy it is to grab those and to be successful at the college. I think that's overall what I'm looking at.
Anna, everybody says you're going to get a job if you come here. Don't even worry about that. Like, so chill. Like, it's so easy. What are some things that students should be looking at in terms of?
Again, I'd go straight to the students. How easy is it for you to get these research opportunities or externships or summer jobs? They will tell you, right? And that will be more reliable than any data you look at or whatever, right? So I think that's a great issue to be looking at because it's not just about what goes on in the classroom, right? It's the opportunities you have outside the classroom because really you are already the CEOs of your future careers, right? You are. You should make little plaques, put them on your desk. You're the CEO. You are the CEO of your life. You are the CEO of your future careers. And I think it helps to go in with that mindset so that you are taking advantage of opportunities that are there, right? To start thinking ahead to your professional life. Because when you get to college, even by the time you finish college, some people by that point know themselves really well as students, right? They know themselves really well as students in an academic environment. They might not know themselves well at all in the working world. And so you can use that time that you're in college to start finding out who you are, what you want, what you don't want, just as important in your work life, which, will be most of your life, right? So I love that you're looking at that. And I would go straight to the students in your particular tracks, And again, you know, I think demographics matter. It's all well and good if, you know, white men are getting all these fabulous opportunities. It's on some level for you guys. Like, I don't care. I don't care if they're getting those opportunities. I care what young Black women in those communities have access to. So I would be very picky about that. Can I switch topics for just one second, Jen, and circle back to something you said? I want to make a little bit of a plug around just a different point of view around the whole graduate student professor distinction.
Yes.
So I will say that
I had a really great graduate student teacher, by the way. So
I was going to say, so Columbia, when I went there, and to my knowledge, this is still the case. I talked to some current students about this. I'm like, oh yeah, nothing has changed. Columbia undergrad, you know, you pay all this money for this Ivy League education, blah, 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 and you could go all 4 years, honestly, without being taught by a single professor.
Wait, what?
For your core classes, for example. I didn't have a single core class with a professor. They were all grad students. Now, I will say they were some of the best classes I took were taught by grad students. And in contrast, one of the worst classes I had in terms of the teaching was an econ class taught by a Nobel Prize winner who was totally checked out. He was drunk as a skunk every time he showed up for class. It was, it all depends. Like, sometimes the grad students are amazing, and the full professor fancy pants Nobel Prize winners are, you know, will make you run and scream for the hills. Right. So again, ask students; they will tell you.
How is for me, it's like, how easy is it to add drop? How easy is it to get core classes? Because you guys have always had like somebody manage that. But I mean, I was in the honors program, so we had priority access. So I never had problems getting classes. But I know some people who had to take it a 5th year or 6th year for a core class. So how easy is it for you to actually get your classes? And then for me, it also comes down to what opportunities are there? Like, so I'm going to use an example that's not on the board right now, but one of the things I've noticed about my students who go to George Mason is they are constantly like, I'm leading this project where I'm doing this. We went to a dance, and all the students at the end, they're like, okay, we're going to bring up the choreographer. And I'm expecting this, you know, like somebody from New York, because it was such a great program. And it was just 5 students. And I said, well, how do you guys get these choreographers? They're like, well, we go to a class and then they encourage us to do it, blah, blah. But every Mason student I know has a story where they've been encouraged to take on a project, do undergraduate research. So is the environment that, for me at Virginia Tech, I had to find the undergraduate research opportunities, or are they pushing those or prioritizing those or making those, you know, let's drop the word institutional priority. Is it a priority for undergraduates to get those opportunities? But I think when you're looking at college, I think students feel like, and I try to demystify this as much as possible, like this is the most important decision of your life. And I would say, as somebody who did not end up at their dream school, everything was fine. Like I would say the only students I've ever had transfer are students who knew that where they wanted to go and then got talked into going somewhere else. Unless there's like a major event. Like sometimes it's major events, but I would say the students who hate it, it's usually, I knew I wasn't going to like it. You know, mom and dad kind of pushed me into it. And if they're paying the bill, then maybe that's a valid thing. But just be committed to finishing your 4 years and just be like, I won't make this mistake again at graduate school, because transferring, woo! So
yeah, it's a journey. Yeah.
I
think there's also something to be said for going to a school that welcomes you and values you and makes that really clear, right? And if you're being pressured to go to a different school, or you're holding out for that waitlist school, and maybe you get the call someday, but you know, they behave like a bad boyfriend basically and stringing you along, and you're like, are you on again? Are you off again? It's like, you know what? There's a school out there that really wants you and values you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that means something.
Mm. So, Amy and Amma, what are some ways that colleges have shown that they value you, and what are some ways? You know what? Let's start with this. What made you? Don't say the school name, please. But what are some things that got you to cross a school off your list?
Mm.
Either one. Look at Amy; she's calculating.
You're both thinking your thoughts. I'm so excited to hear them.
We're not naming names, so it's a safe space.
I think Price.
Oh, well, yeah.
As it should be. Yeah.
Price, and then also talking to students and their experiences at this school.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also has impacted my decision.
Okay. Amma?
I think the environment or like the area that it was in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, you couldn't see yourself there for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's funny because I had my mom record a video yesterday, and she's like, she passed by the cows, and she's like, at Virginia Tech, because we have cows on campus, of course. And she was like, she's not going to survive a week. No way. But for me, Virginia Tech was so in a bubble that I never noticed that we were in the middle of nowhere, because it's just the community is so large that it felt like a whole city onto itself. And so
it's a college town, basically, right?
I mean, yeah. And so I think you end up, but I also remember, as much as I say rich schools do great tours, I remember the first time I saw Torg Bridge, and I was like, you know what? This is going to be good. Like, this is like, it was not even my second choice, but it was cheap. It was affordable. I was working at IHOP. I felt like I could pay off myself if I had to. It wasn't going to create a financial strain on my parents. I could put some money down for tuition, but I decided I was going to not put myself in a position where I was taking on a lot of debt for undergrad, because in my mind, I had already started thinking of it as a 10-year journey. And one of my friends, Marco, was like, pay as little as you can for undergrad, because you want to have as much space as possible for grad to say, if I need to go all out for grad, I can go all out. If I need to get 2 degrees, I can get 2 degrees. If I need to get, go to a really expensive school that has the best opportunity, I can do that. He's like, I deliberately saved money there so that I could have that space. Anna, can you talk about how this is not just a 4-year journey anymore, but I don't even know how long these kids are going to be in school anymore, but the economy's changed.
The economy has changed, and there's a certain amount of degree inflation that has happened for a long time now, where sort of college is the new high school, grad school is the new college. The good news is that since you're both in STEM fields, grad school is almost certainly going to be a good investment if you choose to make that investment. I don't feel nearly as confident when it comes to non-STEM grad school. Master's programs in particular, a lot of them are just money pits, and you're just unemployable at the end, and you're worse off afterwards than you were before. It should be a scandal, and so but in STEM, I have fewer concerns around the grad school investment. And I agree 100% with Jen's argument that if you are thinking long term, if you're going to go all out financially in terms of the investment with undergrad versus grad school, spend it on grad school.
And for me, having the ability to pay, I think Virginia Tech at that time, I'm sorry for everybody who's going now, but Virginia Tech at that time was $3,000. And I had been working at IHOP since I was 15, so I could put some money down to it. And that allowed my parents to be able to, for law school, help me a little bit more because some of the costs were covered. So, and then, as Anna knows, when you're taking the bar, having somebody to help support, because I didn't spend so much, was really, really helpful because I decided to just I was able to say I've saved enough money because I worked the entire time. I've not spent too much on undergrad, and I can now live on about. I had like 3 months where I could take off, and my costs were low enough that I could do that. And I think sometimes we forget that. As somebody who went to law school, Anna, you went to law school. I don't. I wish I had explored PhDs. Is what I'm not saying it was a bad investment. I loved UVA Law School, but I wish I hadn't been so narrow-minded. And I think sometimes we go into college, and I was one track mind, like let's law school, law school, law school. And I wish I had explored other options. Anna, do you feel the same way? Or when did you know that you wanted to be a lawyer, Anna?
Oh gosh. It was definitely for lack of exploring other options.
Yeah.
And I wish I had done that. But more importantly for me, I wish I had not gone straight into grad school from undergrad.
Thank you.
I don't think that's good for anybody. And when I talk to people who are doing that, it's usually coming from pressure from the parents to go straight through.
Yeah.
Which is, they can all come to their own decisions, of course. But I think not going straight through to grad school is important time for you to figure out who you are out in the full-time working world. I think that is important knowledge to have. I'll also say that since you, like many undergrads, have already pre-committed yourself to a certain track in undergrad, just be mindful. You can keep barreling down that road and it might be perfect for you. But I've also seen people who picked a certain specialization for undergrad and then realized, this is not for me at all. And when it turns into a train wreck, it's because they waited too long to be honest with themselves and make a change. Because if it's not working and it's not the right thing for you, it'll show in your transcript. You will not be doing as well as you would like to be if you're miserable in that program or it's not the right fit for you, right? So I would just say, be honest with yourself every step of the way. And if it turns out this is fantastic, I chose well, carry on, good for you. But it worked. We expect a lot of 17 and 18-year-olds to commit to a particular track. It's a very young age to be expected to pick a pre-professional track. And so that's where advising, I think, can be really important as well. When you hit certain walls or you need that kind of support, go talk to the advisors. And that's why right now, while you're doing your research, you want to know what the advising infrastructure is like. And are you going to have those kinds of resources, even just emotionally, when you're making some important decisions about your life?
Amy, Amma, thoughts, responses? It's so funny. They're so talkative every time of the year, but it's like I find that students become so much more thoughtful during this time. I would say the biggest thing is almost every adult I know, except for I would say maybe 10 to 15%, is not doing what they thought they were going to be doing when they went to college. And I would say advising is so important because my advisor was like, well, what if you decide not to do law one day? I was like, I'm going to do law for the rest of my life. What are you talking about?
And here we are. Yeah.
And here we are, right? And so
life is full of pivots. And so you want to be open to that. You want to be thoughtful about it. And just because you made a decision in your junior year in high school, that might not be the right decision for you 3 years later or whatever it is, and that's life. There's going to be a whole series of those kinds of things in your life going forward, so you want to be smart about figuring out how to navigate those should that come to pass. It might not, right?
Amy, do you have any nerves or reservations going into decision day?
I think the nervous thing is picking the right college. I think that's what it is. Just I think what I'm scared for is I'm going to think I'm making the right decision and I get there and I'm like, this is not, which I guess I can like stick it through and I'll be able to be fine wherever between the two schools. But I don't want to have regret being like, oh, I should have went to this college because I see this, that, and third from that college. That's what I'm scared of.
I see you
I'm
shaking
so-
your head.
You too, Alma? Is that
Yeah,
a
I'm
big
kind of in the same boat.
source
Like
of anxiety?
I'm a very indecisive person, and sometimes like I regret things, and I can see myself going back and thinking, like, say I'm having a bad day at whatever college I choose, and it's like I wouldn't be having a day like this if I was at X college, you know. So that's kind
Grass
of
is
on my
greener. Grass is
Yeah.
greener, you know. At the same time, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there are very few decisions in life that you can't fix if you turn out to make a mistake.
So
So
good.
it feels like such an important decision, high stakes, like most important decision I'll ever make. Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
No.
And then I would also add, you know, if you get there and you really are convinced this was a mistake, I should have picked door B instead of door A, you fix it. You know, you apply to transfer. Like, most things are fixable if you turn out to make a horrible mistake. Not true for everything in life, but for most things in life. So if this is feeling so high stakes and this is causing so much anxiety for you, understand that actually you can correct course after you get there if it turned out you made the wrong call for yourself. And that's true for so many things in life. And so I think once you lift that from your shoulders and recognize, like, this is not set in stone forever, you know, there's room for error here, then hopefully it becomes a less anxious process
And
to make a decision.
I would also add, though, like, don't keep the door open mentally where you're like, I should have gone here. Let me tell you something. Not in pre-law at Virginia Tech, because that was lovely, but law school, there's not very many good days in your first year of law school, as Anna can tell you. Like, there's good nights where, like, you get to bond with your peers, but the days are long and treacherous, and then there's an exam, right? But pre-med and engineering, I promise you, somebody else is looking at your position and saying, I wish I was over there. So I would mentally try as much as possible to close a door and say, I'm here. I'm going to make it work. And
give it your best shot. You owe that to yourself.
And I'm going to not have transfer in the back of my mind unless it's so extreme that it's just to the point of whatever. Both of you have great options, so I'm sure you could transfer to the other college, but I think sometimes we're always keeping the door open when it's kind of like the boyfriend of your 20s, right? Where you're like kind of circling back all the time. And at one point you just have to say, no, it's time for me to commit to this decision, move on with my life, make it work. And then for me, one of the things that I learned in law school that I wish I had learned at Virginia Tech is I was saying, this is not working for me. So what are you going to do to fix it? And not in a pretentious or entitled way, but I remember I sat down with Martha Ballinger at UVA Law and I said, I'm not doing well. And she's like, it's normal. It happens. And I said, no, but I'm not comfortable. And therefore, what are some things that you guys can do to make me feel more confident when I'm writing these exams? And, you know, the law school was able to have me sit down with my writing professor, go over some of my exams, improve whatever. What are some of the resources? And asking a school or asking a student, when you felt like boxed in and trapped, how did you get out of it and who assisted? I think I'm remembering, Anna, that story that Malcolm Gladwell did about the rankings, where it's like the professor or the president called to say, like, hey, what's going on with you? Those are like some of the things that I'm looking for. Like, how do you figure it out? And do you feel alone every time you have to figure something out? Or do you feel like you can have that conversation? And in terms of class sizes, sometimes the bigger classes, you can make that connection. So sit up front, whatever, go to office hours. But are they encouraging you to go up to office hours? Are they asking, hey, like, is there creating a climate of that?
I mean, if I can just be the kind of the wet blanket here for a minute, big research universities are not designed to nurture you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want that, you need to pick a small liberal arts school or a small engineering school that is very focused on undergrads, because a major research university that's not that, they don't see that as their mission, right? And I think one of the biggest things that makes the transition hard for a lot of people from high school to college is that you get to college and the burden is entirely on you to ask for help. And so I would always say to everybody, ask for help sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And do not just, a lot of people's instincts are like, well, I'm just going to put my head down. Very privileged people feel totally entitled to ask for help. And guess what? They are out getting help and asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not, you are going to fall far further and further behind compared to those peers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get to college, regardless of, these resources or those resources, and some schools definitely do it better than others, but the burden is going to be on you to go seek help. There's nobody who's going to be kind of looking around, especially at a big research university, going, oh, who's in trouble here? Who's in trouble here?
Mm-hmm.
You have to put your hand up, and you have to sometimes be a bit aggressive about finding the people who can help you. And there's absolutely no shame in that. And the sooner you do that, when you feel like, oh, things aren't going well, don't double down and dig a deeper hole for yourself. A lot of people find themselves in a deeper hole because they didn't ask for help soon enough.
And I would just say it's so important. I realized really quickly it was so important to have a relationship with the faculty. And if you can find somebody that you connect to, because I would just go to my professor, even though the class was over, and I'd be like, I'm still struggling with this. She's like, why haven't you tried this? Why haven't you tried this? Have you looked into this? Like, having that connection is really important. And I think in my second and third year, when I had those smaller classes, it was just so much easier and organic. But I made sure that I was known by every professor within the first week of getting to the large campuses. I never turned in a paper without the professor looking at it beforehand. I've treated college like a job, and I was like 50 hours. I met my 50 hours every single week. And I would not go out unless I had done everything that I needed to do. Because for me, I wanted to make sure I was in the best position for grad school. And I, like Anna says, I wish I had waited a year or 2 years or 3, because I think I could have found out the public policy or going into education would have been better for me. But I think there is some value. So last thoughts before we go, like by the next time, well, not by the next time I see y'all, but because I'll see you before that. But by the next time you guys see them, they'll have made their decision. Any last thoughts? Amy, and then Amma, and then Anna, I'll let you close us out. And any questions, feel free to put them somewhere and I'll get them. But Amy.
Okay, this is specific to me, but what do you think I should ask pre-med advisors? Because I have a meeting on tomorrow and Monday. So what questions do you think I should ask them?
I love that question, because I think you flip the script and say, look, I haven't done college before.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been pre-med before. In a perfect world, how would this advising relationship work? Let them tell you. Let them give you the playbook. How are you supposed to know? Right? Let them articulate it. I'd be so curious. What do they say? Right? Because especially if they have some experience already as advisors, they have a good sense of like, here are the people who really benefit from the advising and why, and here are the people who don't and why.
And what's the biggest mistake that you see students making with their advisor? Or because I think learning from others' mistakes is also important. Amy, that was so good. Yes.
I love that question.
I love that question. Amma, no pressure.
No pressure.
You don't have to, you can say a statement or a question, whatever you want to do.
Oh, I actually do have a question. So with engineering, I know that like the classes are very like STEM heavy. So what are some ways I can distance myself from STEM sometimes when I just need a break from all of that, like math and science and research?
I'm not a STEM person, so I would direct that to the STEM people you talk to at the colleges that you are considering. I think it's a great question in general, whether you're STEM or not, to ask current students, like, what do you do for fun here? Because you're going to get very different answers on different campuses, depending on the culture there, you know, and it doesn't make one thing right or wrong, but it might be right or wrong for you, right? So if you ask them, what do you do for fun? That gives you a sort of thread you can pull to find out, you know, well, when you're trying to have some boundary around school and academics, how does that get filled? What do people do? And either that sounds interesting to you and is energizing to you and will fill up your battery again, or it might sound like the seventh circle of hell. You know, this is where campus cultures are very different, right? And so, and you know, and you're an individual, you have your own definitions of fun and what you would find the best ways to recharge.
And I think current students are really a great resource. One thing I would say is talking to somebody, I think I was down to like 2 or 3, and one was like a couple $1,000s more. And I said to one of the students, is it worth this much more? And they were like, no. And said it without hesitation. They're like, no, I would not pay that much more to go here. And asking them about, like, would you turn, like, not like, would you turn down, but like, here are my options. What do you think as well? Because at the end of the day, if you can't have conversations with the students that are there and they're not like being transparent or they're being kind of cagey, then you have to ask yourself, why? Right? And is this a right environment for me? But I will say, at the end of the day, I always tell people this, and I say this, and it has never come back. If you're in a bad situation, we can always get you out of it. Between me and Anna and the internet, we can find somewhere else. And I mean, I had an admissions officer the other week be like, is that student still happy at this college? Because let them know we're still open, you know? So there's another college that might be the right environment, but just, it's not the biggest decision of your life. I would say grad school more defined me than any other decision. And grad school clearly didn't define me that long because I'm not a lawyer anymore. But
you have so much life ahead of you and so many other major decisions ahead of you. Like this
tip of the iceberg. This
is a major decision now, but you have plenty of those coming down the pike. I would also say, Jen, to your example, if there's a school that you actually prefer and there's some cost difference, ask them if they'll close that gap. Again, the worst they can do is say no, take it or leave it. But you can always ask. Now, the window to negotiate that, you know, is closing, right? So ask sooner rather than later. But if you genuinely prefer that other school and it comes down to some price difference, let them know. They really will try to work with you. And they have their own constraints. They have their own budgets they have to work with. They've got a lot of different people they have to keep happy. But that's their problem. You can always ask. And if there's a way for them to close that gap, it is worth asking. So if you're totally indifferent, go with the cheaper one. But if you really prefer the more expensive option, see if they'll work with you. It is absolutely worth asking. It is not weird. It is not considered gauche. It is completely normal to ask. So don't hesitate.
And then if you're going to spend more, make sure you're closing that gap every year. So if you're going to spend more, then you better be hustling. All right. Well, thank you, Anna. We always have a great time with you.
Oh, it's so nice to talk to you. And I hope we do this again, reunion style, and hear how Amila and Alma are doing. And bring the birdies back into the nest to see how things are going. I think you
were with Stephanie last year.
I was,
So Amy's here now, but Stephanie's here. So it's kind of
maybe we can bring Stephanie back too and just have a little reunion with everybody.
She would love that. But anyway, guys, we're gonna sign off. And guys, remember, everybody remember in here that we're going to sign off, but don't log off. But if you guys have questions, Anna, how can people find you?
Email me at support@annaivey.com, and that's spelled IV as in Victor, EY.com. There's a little E hiding in there.
And she's always on Twitter too. So.
Oh yeah, the usual social. Come find me on social. That's
tag
fine too.
us.
I know it's like, who does email? Like the whole that's like for old people. I get that.
But yeah. Okay, guys. So I'm going to turn off the broadcast. Bye, everyone.